About 700 miles north of the Antarctic Peninsula lie the Falkland Islands, a place that has been a source of conflict between European empires for centuries. Even today, it is of interest to international powers. About 200 kilometers north of the islands, an estimated 325 million barrels of recoverable oil lie below the ocean floor. Further afield, Russian research ships recently found 511 billion barrels worth of oil in British Antarctic territory. This is equivalent to around 10 times the North Sea's output over the last 50 years. Meanwhile, Argentina, just 217 miles west, claims the Falklands as its own. The islands are recognized as a British overseas territory, yet with news of Britain's defense cuts and struggling economy, can the UK realistically hope to hold on to the Falklands in a conflict? Today we examine the likelihood of a confrontation in the South Atlantic, who might emerge victorious, and the implications for the region. Britain's biggest threat to the Falklands comes from Argentina, which has claimed the islands since the early 1800s. In 1982, Argentina took the bold step of initiating an invasion, calculating that the UK would not defend the territory. British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher responded by deploying a naval task force of 127 vessels to the South Atlantic, including anti-submarine frigates, air defense destroyers, and aircraft carriers. The journey took about 2 weeks. When the task force arrived, it established a 200-mile exclusion zone around the Falklands. British troops landed in May, and after 21 days of hard fighting, the Argentine force surrendered on the 14th of June. Argentina's defeat serves as a deterrent for another invasion today, and other factors also count against the odds of a conflict. Argentina's new president, Javier Milei, has taken a more pro-Western stance than his predecessors. In particular, he has sought closer ties with the US, the key British ally. However, Milei has stated that he wants sovereignty over the Falklands through diplomatic means. At least 3 variables could conceivably entice Argentina to pursue the military option again. First, the UK is 8,000 miles away from the Falklands, making it difficult to quickly mobilize a response to an invasion and sustain long-range supply lines. Second, the UK cannot claim cover from its defensive alliance with NATO. Article 6 specifies that collective self-defense is applicable only to attacks on member state territories north of the Tropic of Cancer. The Falklands fall below this line. Third, Argentina's economy has been struggling for some time. In such circumstances, national leaders around the world have used wars to deflect unpopularity at home. An attempt to seize the islands could rally some much-needed unity. Despite these 3 incentives, a conflict between Argentina and the UK seems unlikely. Yet what if tensions did boil over? Which nation stands a realistic chance of victory? Britain is arguably at more of a disadvantage today compared to the Falklands War. Its armed forces are far smaller. In 1982, its numbers stood at 163,000. Today, the UK's regular army personnel stands at 75,000. Its naval numbers are also smaller. Today, personnel figures stand at 32,000 compared to 73,000 in 1982. RAF figures have also fallen by 2/3 to 30,000 personnel. Naval assets have also fallen. In the Falklands War, the Royal Navy boasted 4 aircraft carriers, 13 destroyers, 51 frigates, and 37 submarines. Today, these assets stand at 2, 6, 9, and 10. On paper, however, the UK still holds an advantage over Argentina. Britain's defense budget stands at $62 billion, with Argentina at a much smaller $2.5 billion. The UK has 184,000 armed forces personnel, with 924,000 in reserve. Argentina has an estimated 108,000 active personnel, with 0 in reserve. The key issue, however, is the distance to the Falklands. Although Britain's army would likely outmatch Argentina's in a fully fielded fight, transporting large troop numbers over 8,000 miles is simply unfeasible. In 1982, Britain's larger navy managed to deploy 4,000 men and required help from civilian vessels, such as the RMS Queen Elizabeth II. Today, a long-range deployment like this would likely be beyond the Ministry of Defence. Another key issue is whether the MOD would risk deploying the jewels in Britain's navy, its Queen Elizabeth-class aircraft carriers. Valued at over £3 billion apiece, a loss of just a single vessel would be crippling to the UK's economy and prestige. Argentina holds a strong advantage with its proximity to the Falklands, which is well within deployment range of its fighter aircraft. The British mainland is well outside of deployment range. However, if it did deploy its carriers, the UK would likely gain air superiority quickly. The backbone of Argentina's fighter force consists of the A4AR Fighting Hawk. By contrast, the UK fields the 5th generation F-35B, a far superior aircraft. One Royal Navy source explains the likely outcome of an air confrontation. There is no comparison in terms of the air-to-air battle. A couple of F-35s would have the situation sewn up long before a 3rd or even 4th generation fighter knew they were there. The UK also has other cards up its sleeve. Although military numbers are lower than in 1982, its technological abilities are far superior. Today, it has offensive cyber capabilities, drones, and space-based systems in its arsenal. If Argentina invaded the Falklands, the defending UK forces would likely hold out longer than in 1982, with bases such as Mount Pleasant now present on the islands. Britain's advanced intelligence capabilities would also give more forward warning of an attack. An invasion could potentially even be staved off without Britain leaving its mainland ports. One scenario is that a GCHQ cyber strike could turn off all the power in the aggressor state's capital. After a few days of chaos, London would be in a strong position to demand a withdrawal. Another conflict over the Falklands would inflict a high human cost. In 1982, the war claimed over 900 lives, 649 Argentine, 255 British, and 3 Falkland Islanders. Yet war also imposes high economic costs. Without the ability to sustain the financial commitment, a war can destabilize and crash a fragile economy. Here, Argentina is at a clear disadvantage. Although awash with natural resources, Argentina has struggled with decades of economic mismanagement. In 2003, its inflation rate broke the 100% mark and escalated to nearly 300% a year later. Argentina has been in recession for 1/3 of the last 70 years, and this occurred again in early 2024. The state has had 3 defaults on its international sovereign debt since 2001, and the currency has become so unstable that black markets for the US dollar are now commonplace. A war is clearly unaffordable for Argentina. The UK, by contrast, is in a healthier state to fight if it had to. Although challenges remain, its economy is growing at a modest pace, and inflation is now near the central bank target of 2%. Images of the Falkland Islands are pervasive in Argentina, featured on buses, trains, schools, and banknotes. However, President Milei's attention seems to be on fixing Argentina's desperate economic situation, rather than a confrontation abroad. With a radical free marketeer in charge, Argentina could be on the verge of opening up its long-closed economy. This could present opportunities for closer ties with the UK and other foreign powers. Trade deals in key areas such as beef and soy production for Argentina and pharmaceuticals for the UK could increase the incentives for peace, which is certainly in everyone's interests. We hope you enjoyed this video. Please consider liking and subscribing to support the channel so we know there is demand for more of our content.